Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is episode 18. Myself and Mike at Hoop Consultants. How you going?
Bogues, I'm waiting for my fucking pink slip, man, for missing out on Monty Williams. I've had multiple messages people telling me how much of a fucking idiot I am. Of course, you're the superstar of the fucking podcast, so you're not going to get it. I'm getting it mostly for being the fucking moron. And even though I wouldn't pick Monty as the head, he'd probably be second. And also, I forgot Quinn Snyder's name last week. That was great. That's my dementia moment. Yeah, like Utah. I called him Utah. If anybody's as fat as the state, it's me, not him. But yeah, so I would have had Monty second just because, I still like my Thibodeau pick, but Monty Williams definitely should have been mentioned, man.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that. We make mistakes and we admit it.
Yeah.
We definitely left a glaring omission, and it was Monty Williams. So thanks to everyone that let us know that. We'll touch on that a little bit deeper later. But I wanted to start with Kevin Love, something that's been a bit of an issue for the last couple of years, to say the least, is obviously we know he has some mental health demons and whatnot. I think we all do at times, to be honest. I think if you play in the NBA long enough, whether you're a coach, a GM, you're going to have some sort of mental health issues, to be honest. And I'm not downplaying his issues, but I mean, I had there were ups and downs and anxiety at times for myself with injuries and whatnot. So I think you have to battle through it. But he's had another probably interesting week. He had the clip against the Raptors where he was frustrated with a foul call, goes to inbound the ball, slaps it away from the referee, basically slaps it right to a Toronto Raptor. They pick it up and shoot a three. He then goes on a rant after the game and hitting just all the things you're supposed to say. I love Cleveland, ride or die. I want to be here. I need to do the right thing. So didn't really know how serious it was. I saw the clip. It looked like he was trying to be serious, but it also looked like he was hitting every cliche under the sun. And it's just been interesting to watch kind of, when he came in the league, man, when he was in Minnesota, I was in Milwaukee. So they were kind of the close Western Conference rivals we had because we were close to each other, an hour flight away. And he was a beast, man. Like he was, 20 and 20 a night. He was having 30 rebound games and, he didn't shoot as many threes then, but he seems like he's a shell of his former self. And I think obviously the mental health thing is one thing, but even his game, it's completely changed. I think falling in love with that three's really changed what he does. But I mean, how do you see everything that he's gone through? I mean, Cleveland's in a rebuild, obviously, and having him around.
Yeah, Bogues, it's an interesting situation that teams and players go through, right? Like, okay, he has the mental health thing. I mean, obviously, he knows more about that than we do, so we don't really know the inner workings of that. But like, this thing could change on you pretty quick as far as what your game is compared to what the league sees you as. And, early on in his career, I mean, he had like a 5-year run, Bogues, from like 2009 to 2014, where he averaged 11 rebounds a game, 15.2, 13, 3, 14, and 12.5 respectively. And to me, I thought he was one of the top 2 or 3 smartest players in the league. Here's this fat, chubby kid with short arms that doesn't look like an athlete, but like finds a way to get his shot off, score, rebound, pass. Like he had all the makings of a great player, but like you look at him and you just like, there's no fucking way this guy's going to be this productive. And he did that. And then along the way, when the 3-point shot came in, his game flourished. He ended up being one of the better space fours in the league, and space 4, space 5, however you want it, however you want to say it. I mean, at first he's in Minnesota. They didn't really have a lot going on. It was like him and Al Jefferson. And then they ended up trading him for Wiggins, and he goes to Cleveland. And then, they get LeBron, and his game's revitalized, and he's this, third option on this team with him, LeBron and Kyrie, and it ends up being good. But then the carpet gets fucking pulled under him. LeBron leaves, Kyrie leaves, and now he's stuck holding the bag. But they, like, both sides, like, they're terrible. They're rebuilding. They sign him to this 4-year, $120 million deal. So, like, it's like The Big Short. Like, if there was a fucking NBA version of The Big Short, it'll be starring Kevin Love. It's $120 million. You're on top for a second, like where you're supposed to be, okay, we're going to build around Kevin. Fuck it. We're going to go around. And then that's it. Then now he's 2 years into a $120 million deal. The team's pretty bad. You got all these young players. You're not really going anywhere yet. And now you're just stuck here, and the frustration showing. Look, the mental health stuff that he dealt with off the court, to me, Bogues, okay, he's dealing with that. But these outbursts on the court, to me, it's like you're quitting on your team. It's bad professionalism. No one forced you to sign this 4-year deal. No one forced you. And you knew what your team was going to be. And to have these outbursts, and then, like, the thing about dealing with Kobe, and we would talk about it a lot, is he goes, look, I owe it to the fucking fans that pay $700 a night, $300 a night, $400 a night to fucking give them a show. Like, I don't care how I'm feeling, if I'm hurt or if I'm not hurt, if my team sucks or we're a championship team, I'm going to try to get 45 and win every night. I want them to, like, leave and say, you know what, Kobe left it on the fucking floor, the Lakers left it on the floor, we're going to go from there. Like, you signed this deal. It's a contract, not only that you're getting this money, but you have to live up to the expectations of that contract where you're going to bring it every night. And then also you have to answer for some of the shit that you do. Like this whole media thing where that play was embarrassing for sure. But it was how he handled the media the next day or that night when he went on that 13-minute talk. Like, not answering any questions. Here's the deal. And he's like literally like a fucking elitist. He's like talking down on the media. Like, I get it if like the media is asking the same shit over and over. Where you going to go in free agency? Where you going to go in the trade? Do you like your coach? I get all that. Like, you're sick of it. You don't want to answer it. But when you do something like that, you're getting $30 million a fucking year. I think as a professional, even if you're going to get your ass kicked that night by the media, you got to face that shit. And that's the difference, I think, between this era player and the era before. Whereas, those players, they didn't like it, but they dealt with it media-wise. And I just think that was... I wasn't a fan of what he did on the court, and I doubly wasn't a fan of what he did not facing the media and not answering questions for it.
Where does it leave them, though? That's the question. They've got a young rebuilding team. They've got a lot of young assets that they're trying to build the right way. You've got now Kevin Love to 2023, I believe. He's a free agent on that big deal, that's a whole separate debate of why. I mean, he had these issues going into signing that deal, right? There were rumors that when he left the game that one time and just drove home or whatever happened when he had an anxiety attack or whatever, there were some people in that locker room that questioned whether he'd quit on the team. And now whether that's fair or not is a separate conversation. You don't know what happened. We don't know what the mental health things were, but there were some players that thought that. So now you're in a situation where he's kind of your leader. So, and he's taken up most of your cap. It's just an interesting one to watch. And going back to your point, sorry, about his game changing is, I think he's a prime example of overemphasizing the three. And what we've spoken about is, like, when we talk about Giannis at times, and we talk a lot about his 3-point shooting, is let's say he did get a 35% 3-point shot. I would be kind of wary of then, is he going to attack as much as he once did? That's Giannis, right? I think Kevin Love's somewhat fallen into that trap. He was a 20-and-20 guy. He was a beast 18 feet from the basket face up. He'd get to his hook shots. If he missed his shot, he'd probably get his rebound most times or not and put it in. And he'd hit the odd 3 ball, where now it's reversed. You're not getting really, the last time he had a 10 rebound game was actually the other night when he was 0 from the field. But usually he's just floor spaced and not trying to get too physical. So there is a happy medium there, and he's a prime example of it, in my opinion. Yeah,
that contract will be stretched fucking quicker than any type pair of jeans that I try to put on, folks. That they're going to stretch him out. I mean, no, I can't see a team giving up unless they're just like bad, like 1-year contracts and there's some picks thrown in. Like, I think for them, look, either they buy him out or they stretch the contract. And then they go forward and just say, you know what, let's wash our hands of it. Allow him to go to another team if that's what he wants to do. I see the frustration, man. I do. Like, they're not winning anytime soon. Here he is. He won a championship, and then he got close a couple of times. He's been an all-star before, but that's the deal you sign, Bogues. Like, sometimes you're going to be in championship situations. Sometimes it's going to be shitty, but you owe it to everybody involved. You put your name on it. You could have gone somewhere in free agency and said, fuck it, I'm going somewhere else. But you signed that deal. And it's not just about getting money. it's about being a professional and sort of living up to the expectations on and off the floor, what you got to do. And yeah, like, but he's so smart. He's a passer. He could rebound. Like, I saw him in high school, right? And I went to the ABCD camp that Adidas ran in New Jersey when he was in high school. And here's a kid. He was like a 6'10" pro. I mean, look, like, he had a gut. He had braces on every fucking joint in his body had a brace on it. You know, it was like, you know, like his joints, he didn't move well, but he passed the shit out of it. He was skilled, but he was like literally a fucking sumo wrestler trying to play basketball. And then he lost all this weight and he did what he got to do when he, you know, he was a little better at UCLA and then he got in the league. And then like a couple years into Minnesota, he really slimmed down and, you know, he's done a lot to sort of, you know, make a name for himself, 5-time All-Star. But, you know, it's funny, Bogues, I didn't tell you this, but I actually helped negotiate his trade on draft day.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so I was working for Tim Grover at the time. We did our pre-draft training, and we got OJ Mayo, you know, for pre-draft. You know, they spent about 2 months with us, and we get him ready for the draft. We spoke about stuff like that on the pod before, and we supposed to get a couple of other players. I thought we might have had a chance, maybe for Derrick Rose. That probably would have been an outside chance, whatever. But Michael Beasley. But so I thought like Kevin McHale was going to have a high pick. They were supposed to get the first pick in the draft. And then I call Kevin right before the lottery. I didn't think he'd pick up. He picks up. I'm talking to him like during the fucking lottery. This guy, him and I going back and forth. And I knew him a little bit from my time at Boston. You know, him and Ainge were close. And so we started talking. I said, Mikhail, I'll give you some intel on our guys that we got coming in. And he said, that's great. So he doesn't get the first pick. He gets like the third pick. And then Minnesota gets the fifth pick. I mean, Memphis gets the fifth pick. And Chris Wallace was the one who hired me in Boston, was the GM. And he was a little bit paranoid about talking to people. He didn't want to get anything out. But his owner was like hot to trot to get OJ Mayo. And OJ Mayo was a higher prospect than Kevin Love at the time. So Minnesota thought, look, we could draft Mayo and then draft him for somebody else, get some assets going forward, and then get our real guy that we wanted, Kevin Love, instead of drafting Kevin and not getting anything. And you know, it's better to do it that way. No one knew it with Oklahoma City was going to do it for. They ended up drafting Westbrook. So for about 2 weeks straight, I'd be talking to like Mikhail, what he want, what he's trying to get from Memphis, and then I'll bring that to Memphis. And then I'd bring back Memphis back to Minnesota. Did that. It was like a fucking ping pong ball for like 2 months. Here I am negotiating, helping negotiate a contract with two fucking millionaires that could have just talked to themselves. I was thinking to myself every night, is like, I wonder if they're going to fucking know that I'm not even needed in this equation. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I'm the fucking Pony Express here, like just bringing messages from one guy to another. And then they ended up making a draft day deal. It was a bunch of like dead weight. They exchanged picks and they got some dead weight. I think the trade was like, so Brian Cardinal, Jason Collins, Mike Miller to Minnesota for Buckner, Marco Jaric, OJ Mayo, Antoine Walker. So, that was sort of the trade. But yeah, it's a shit show. What's happened. It happens, Bogues. Like, look, it's I'm sure it happened to you. Like, maybe a team was good at one point, and then like overnight they trade guys, and now, or you're traded to a shitty situation, or your team ends up being in a rebuilding mode. And like, what do you think about that stuff, Bogues? Like, how does that affect you? Like, has that happened to you in your career as far as like teams shifting gears as far as, now you went from bad to good, right? Like in Golden State, but did that ever happen to you in Milwaukee or anything like that? Not really. Other stuff?
I mean, going to Dallas obviously did, but I mean, the point I'd make with Kevin Love is, you mentioned it. It is frustrating the situation he's in, but he's not on a vet min contract. He's not on a 2-year $6 million. He signed a max deal as their veteran leader, star, so you gotta roll the punches and know, hey, I'm signing this contract. We're probably not going to win for a bit, but they're overpaying me for it. I can't get this money anywhere else. I assume he would have went to a winning team if they were going to pay him that money, but no one had that cap space to pay him, and they kept him, and he's got to abide by that part of the bargain, right? But yeah, I mean, look, it happened to me somewhat in Dallas, but I was on a vet min deal, so I could get away. I could.
Yeah.
It wouldn't cost the team much money. We ended up being traded and then waived and then moving on, which was all strategic. But it does get frustrating. It's something you have to deal with. But at the same time, if Dallas if Dallas signed me to a 4-year, $60 million contract and said, look, you might not play a lot, you might blah, blah, blah. Hey, what do I need to do? You know what I mean? That's the difference.
Yeah.
I think that's where this gets lost, where it is, Kevin Love's going to understand that he's paid, a lot to be a star, but also there's a portion of that money that's going towards, we've got a young rebuilding group and they're looking at you like how to handle things. So the last thing you want is a Garland or a Sexton or someone to emulate what you're doing when they're, a 10-year veteran, because then it's, that's a lot of negativity. So, I mean, I'll be interested to watch how it goes. If he does get stretched or waived, who picks him up, where he ends up. But he's turning 33 this year as well. So his body type, not the most athletic guy as it is, really good 3-point shooter. Maybe only has another year or two at an NBA level, in my opinion. I think beyond that, he'll be gone. But we'll follow that closely. The next one for me was the Warriors' ups and downs, as I have them on TV in the background. And they've just gone on a 30-5 run against Houston, but it is Houston or whatever. Just the ups and downs. I think the ups and downs are really glaring. That they look all world one game, and then the next game they look like awful. The Dallas game was one that we discussed, where Dallas go on a 20 or 30 point run and blow the game open by halftime. To me, looking at it, it's as simple as if Steph's not gunning for him and scoring, they don't have a chance to win games. How do you see that?
I see the same thing. I just see a lack of talent if they can't just score and outscore you. I think, the Steph's, like, the way you use Steph is he's going to have to be your MJ every night, where he's going to have to get 35 to 40 for you to have a chance against most teams. And Wiggins is so up and down, and Wiseman's been, obviously he's out. You don't know what you're going to get from Oubre from night to night. And then the rest of the bench really doesn't give you a lot. They give you some nights, some that doesn't. Obviously, Draymond's more of a facilitator, rebounder, than a scorer this year. So I think it's just going to be really tough without Clay, and then without that other piece that they're missing. I just think it's going to be really tough for them, for sure to get something going. But the effort thing, man, but it's not just Golden State; it's across the league. And I just think that with the whole bubble thing, the attitude of players of how they approach games, like sometimes they'll give it to you, sometimes they won't, and then it's like next game, it's always this whole next possession, next game, next month mentality where like, all right, fuck it, let's get to the next one, instead of like, I know you shouldn't dread on a lot of things because it'll clog your mind, but you're gonna have to put a string of games together where you're playing well, and they just haven't been able to do that for long stretches of time.
Yeah, I think with the glaring thing was that the effort. They're not in a position where they're 1-5, 1-6. They're not a Brooklyn that can have 2 or 3 of those nights in a month and still be okay, which we see a lot. And we're seeing it a lot with a lot of teams that are in the bubble and coronavirus. We're seeing a lot of that. But they're one of those teams that's that 6 or 7 to 11 spot. Like there's really no room for error if you want to get into those playing games. I mean, they're still probably going to make it even if they go 500 the rest of the way, because New Orleans is such a shit show and they're 3 games behind them in 11th. But you'd think there'd be a bit of kind of alarm bells ringing, like we got a chance to at least sneak into the playing games. And Golden State's one of those teams that you put them in a playing game and Steph has 50, you could knock off a really good team in those playing games. And then in a 7-game series, a different story. But in a playing game, you'd almost bet on them just because they do have Steph, right? And I just saw that, a couple of minutes ago in this Houston game where Houston looked like they had control. They're up 10 and now they're down 20. And that's how quickly you can turn with this Steph, right? But going in a 7-game series, probably not. But it's just been interesting to see that the effort thing for a team that, does have, like you said, they don't have a lot of scoring. They don't have a lot of super talent right now because of their injuries. Obviously, Steph and Wiggins and Draymond are probably the most talented guys. You have to at least bring that effort. Like your bench guys have to bring that effort. So it was kind of glaring the last couple of games of them, just being so helter-skelter and up and down. And
they're good enough to get to 8. Like, right now they're 14 out of first, right? Like, Memphis is sitting there at 8. They're 12 and a half out. I mean, you're only a game and a half with, like, about 9 games to go where you could get up to 9, 8, and sort of make a little bit of run at this. But that's just sort of the mentality of the NBA for the most part, Bogues, like the competitive player that's competitive every night. I mean, you could probably count it on 2 hands, maybe 3, 2.5 hands on the players that are strictly competitive every night. They bring it every night. It's tough, man. It's just, you could blame Corona, you could blame social. I don't know what you blame, but you see it across the league with all these blowouts. Like a team plays well one night, they get blown up by 40 the next night. They come back, they play the same team back to back. Once they lose by 30, then they win by 25. Like, there's a lot of that going on. It's hard to chart what's the issue.
I think it's just the amount of games. I can't be a hypocrite and say that I've coasted through some games before. We're down 20 in the third, and you're like, shit, we're not bringing this back. Let me just, whatever. Everyone, most players have done it. Even those elite have done it. The difference is they don't do it on stretches. It might be a one-off or a rarity throughout a season. It might be 2 games in a season where they're like, even Kobe's had those games where he's, got frustrated and refused to shoot or whatever. But very, very rare. Yeah. But there's a lot of players that the slightest amount of adversity gets shut down. And the only team I'd ever been on that didn't do that in the regular season was the Warrior team with the 73 wins. And we won 73 wins because of that. We won 73 games, because it was taken personal whenever someone would beat us. So whenever we'd lose a game, it was like, I've spoken about this at length, it was almost an awkward environment the day after we'd lose a game, because we'd all be looking at each other like, motherfucker, like, why didn't you box out? Or why didn't you get a hand up on that late 3? Or why didn't you rotate? You weren't there for my crackback. Or why did you not swing the ball when someone was open in the corner? And that's what made us a great team. But then, like you said, we didn't dwell on that for days. It was the next day was kind of that awkwardness in the air. We were like, shit, whoever we play next is in some trouble, right? And that was the only team I'd been on that was like that. That run we had for 3 or 4 years, but mainly that year. And that's rare. Teams, in Milwaukee, we had veterans, we had people moving through. I'd been part of different rebuilds, and you just don't get that, where there'll be a handful of games, even outside of coronavirus years, where I think there's just too many games and guys can take that shit for granted. You go to Miami and guys are out late. It's like, we had games in Milwaukee when I was there where the coaches basically knew, like, we're going to get smacked tomorrow, like, because just based on we're going to South Beach, like, guys are not going to sleep.
Yeah.
We're battling for a playoff spot. We're about 500. We could make it or not, and we're probably going to get, we're going to be down 20 to 7 at the first time out, and I'm going to have to try to make an adjustment with some of our bench guys that are ready to play, and that's kind of pretty alarming. But it is what it is in the NBA, and that's just something that I think the amount of games contribute to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could definitely go with that, especially with the schedule now. With all these back-to-backs they got to play, and then the amount of games they play in by the week. And you can't expect those guys to bring it every night, like you said. There are very few that did it. And you even hear stories about like the '80s Celtics teams. When they were so good, like in '86, they would just, sometimes they'd sleepwalk through the first 2.5 quarters and then finally turn it on. Like, sometimes you get bored. There aren't many great teams like that can get bored, but it just it's weird to see, but it's just something that that people got to deal with today, I guess.
And then I'm going to segue this into something that we didn't have planned to talk about. The playing games, right? So there's 2 arguments for the playing games. I've heard the argument of like a 9-10 seed that, is way below 500 shouldn't be even a chance to play for the playoffs, considering you're playing 70 or 80 regular season games. Then you've got the other argument of it kind of incentivizes you that if you're in that bottom half that you don't go full tank mode. I would agree with that. I've actually enjoyed watching the bottom part of that. Who's going to be in the playing game? I've enjoyed that the last 3 or 4 weeks because I think it's bringing some excitement and the excitement of it being a one-off game. There's some intrigue there. So I think it's not a horrible idea. Look, it doesn't look great if a team that is in 10th ends up making the first round, even potentially the second round that one, went 35 and whatever. But I think it has made these games a bit more meaningful. The worst place to be in NBA world is to be a team like, let's say, Golden State on a normal year where you're probably not going to get the 8 seed and it with about 15, 20 games left. And then they start doing that, the Minnesotas and the Memphises from the past of tanking and strategically guys are hurt. And we did it in Golden State with Mark Jackson when I first got there. We had about 20-something games left and they literally shut everyone down with all these kind of, interesting injuries and blah, blah, blah. And we ended up keeping our pick that was protected, which turned into Harrison Barnes. So there's a reason to do it, and you can't blame teams for doing it. But I think this now somewhat incentivizes teams a little bit more that don't go full tank mode. What are your thoughts on it? Do you like it, or are you going to wait to see how it plays out?
No, I like it, Bogues. I was sort of in the middle on it, but now I sort of like it. Like you said, it it sort of livens up the season, especially those teams that usually tank that are in the middle there. Now they want, it's sort of, first of all, it turns it into a little bit of an NCAA tournament deal where it's a one-off, and then you could advance like a 9-10 that was never in the playoffs before. You win your 9-10 game and then you have a chance. You got to beat the 7-8, twice, obviously. But like, I think it's a pretty good deal, to be able to do that. It adds some excitement for sure. Now I know how teams aren't excited about it now because of the amount of games they've had to play, but because of Corona and the way the schedule played itself out, I think it sort of opened up this opportunity to sort of do this going even forward, even when everything opens up full. I think they should just keep this as well. Like the play-in deal, it sort of adds a little excitement. And then, let's be honest, like we talk about it all the time, year in and year out, about the tanking, how disgusting it is and how many teams do it. Now, probably the bottom 4 teams would probably, jockey for it. But before it was like all those teams were trying to jockey for a better pick. Even the teams that like were going to be like 9 or 10 would do it. Now it's like everybody's fighting. Even 11 and 12 is fighting to try to get to 10. So I like it. I think when let's be honest, the NBA is not all that competitive on a night-to-night basis unless it's a big game or it has big implications. I think it adds a little bit more excitement. It adds a little bit more, teams going at each other a little bit and adds just more competitive nature, throughout the league. And I think it's good.
I agree. So we'll watch that space, and I think it'll only ramp up with these playing games, and then, like I said, the storyline of Steph dropping 50 and then all of a sudden potentially facing a higher ranked team like the Lakers. In the next round will be fun to watch. But I'm going to move on to Kevin Porter Jr. I'm going to ask you: have you ever seen a departing superstar be better replaced by a guy for both their on-court and off-court escapades?
Well, I mean, unbelievable, man.
Lefty, shoots step-back threes, just dropped a 50 ball, frequently visits strip clubs and gets out on the town. I mean, it's basically James Harden's younger twin.
I think what happened was Daryl Morey got like a little piece of DNA off of Harden's skin and like cloned him into a potato. And, it ended up getting this kid. Because it's unbelievable that those guys sort of have a lot in common, for sure.
They do, and it's been good to watch. I mean, we spoke about how talented this kid was when he was in Cleveland and everything happened there with the soup, and it's been good to see him perform. It just goes to show that he is that talent everyone thought he was. It's that off court stuff. Can he calm that down the next couple of years and really solidify himself as a star and then a superstar and then an all-star? I think he has all the tools as we've seen to drop a 50 ball. I don't care how you're labeled or who you are. That's a very, very tough feat to accomplish, even in today's game with all the free throws and three-point shooting. So credit to him, and he did it at a very efficient clip. It wasn't like he was just, it wasn't like he took 40 shots to get it. He did a very good job with it. So I'm interested to see.
Yeah, how about more 50-point nights and less time with footage on the fucking, on a fucking police cam on a strip club in the fucking.
Oh, wow, yeah, that was.
Yeah, I want to see him on the Jumbotron a lot more than I fucking want to see him on body cam footage, and that's where he's got to sort of, and I understand that was sort of a weird deal, but they obviously broke protocol because he had to drop another 50. Unfortunately, they weren't points. There was 50,000. It was fine to the league, but like he's got to smarten up on those things, and but I understand he was out. I don't know what the story is, but his teammate got attacked or got in some kind of altercation. It's not a great situation to be in, but he just has to figure, like, he's got the talent for sure. I didn't see him much before this, and he's obviously done pretty well, even though Houston isn't very good, but he just has to clean up the other stuff. Just, like, let that game mature, let yourself mature, take care of yourself, but sort of have good judgment when it comes to off-the-court stuff. No one's saying not to go out or not to have a good time. Look, NBA players are going to go to strip clubs. That just happens. But, like, you just got to stay out of the public eye like that. You just want to sort of distance yourself. I didn't know there was an altercation. I thought maybe the soup was bad in the strip club and he fucking threw another fit. But, obviously it wasn't. But he just has to smarten up on those things and just sort of stay out of harm's way. But I think, the kid's got a little talent for sure. He's got some talent and ability, and, it'll be interesting to watch him going forward.
Yeah, my advice to him would be bring the party to your house. You've got some NBA money now. There are strict protocols with all the COVID shit, and you can't really go out. You can't do what you want to do. Bring it to your house, overpay some strippers, some friends of yours, some boys, whatever you want to do. Bring it to your house, have your fun there for now. Wait for this shit to die down. Yeah, you just can't afford to be in the media and trending after a 50-point night. You know, everyone's talking about the 50-point night, but also talking about a $50,000 fine for breaking NBA COVID rules, you know?
Yeah, and if he's going to bring it to his house, unfollow Paul Pierce because you don't want to go on IG Live and follow his footsteps either.
Delete the app.
Yeah.
At least for that 24
Absolutely.
hours.
Yeah.
Some Steve Kerr comments I found interesting. He basically came out and said, I think it was after that Dallas game, funnily enough, it just basically said that you know, what we've just talked about, the effort thing is not a priority, and it's hard to get that out of guys. His comments read, NBA guys don't box out. It's just the way it is. Every night on League Pass, I see the same thing. Players let guys come in from the weak side and they think, I'll just get the rebound. It's a disease that's rampant in the NBA. The problem is, if you're a real small team like us, then it's going to hurt you more than it will other teams. It's not even like a college box out or a high school box out. In the NBA, it's more about locating the guy and just putting your hand or your forearm in his chest, letting someone else go chase the ball. So we're staring up at butterflies, up in the air, just looking at guys coming right by us. That doesn't matter what kind of possession it is, what kind of shot it is. It's just the awareness to go hit somebody. And then he went on to say, basically, most of these guys didn't have a high school or college coach yelling at them for a combined 8 straight years. It's a different world today. Players grow up in a different way in terms of basketball background. The detail is often the thing that is lacking now. And then he does kind of tone it down a little bit and say, he's basically saying that he thinks players today have much more skill than they did back in the day, but just not as much effort and hard work. And I agree with him for the fact that the fundamentals of those little things that don't get you on Instagram are no longer looked at as important. But what scratches my head with that is, dude, you're the head coach. If this is an issue, all right, you can't control other teams you watch on League Pass, but this is an issue in your team. Call it out. You know, I mean, I know you have some veterans. I know you have some guys that probably don't want to hear it at this point in their career or in a season that they're fighting for a 10th seed when they've been, you know, in the midst of trying to win 2-peat, 3-peats, but you're the head coach. You're the guy that can fix it. So that's why I found these comments interesting, because I mean, if you can air that in the media, I hope you've aired that out to your players. You can watch film. I mean, sometimes it's as simple and subtle as, hey, film coach, get me every missed box out from last night's game. You know, put it in an edit that takes 4 minutes and 30 seconds or 5 minutes, and we're going to sit there and watch it, you know, and I'm just going to let this play. I'm not going to say a word, and your point will be made. And you know, you got to, like you've said many a times, you can't do that every day and you can't do it all the time. But if that's an issue within your team, like he said, they're smaller than everyone else. If they don't box out, they got no chance. Call it out. How did you see all that?
It's funny, like the problem with the NBA, with, you know, there's many problems, right? But the biggest thing is like, what's important? Meaning, okay, so your team doesn't box out. Well, most NBA practices, what are they doing? All right, they're watching film of what happened last game. They're putting in their 79 out of bounds plays. They're putting in their 421 ATOs they want to put in. They're getting shots up in practice. They yell at them about, okay, we're not boxing out. And I don't know Steve Kerr. I don't know how he runs business. So I'm not talking about him. I'm just talking about the league in the whole, being around the league and talking to enough people. So boxing out's a problem. So you address it in film like they all do. They always address it in film. But then, like, they just care about mostly result. So if they get a rebound, so if boxing out's their problem and they have 12 clips where they don't box out but they get a rebound, they'll be like, that's a great effort for the rebound. That's it. No. You just fucking said we don't box out. So how you need to do that, Bogues, is you take it to the practice court. You take it from the film to the practice court and say, look, fellas, and he's one of the only guys that has like this carte blanche for his organization because of what he's done. He's, you know, won multiple championships there. They're going to be all in on him. So like, you bring it to the practice floor and say, look, fellas, if you don't do it on the practice floor and you miss box outs, you know, when you could box somebody out, we're going to run. And then if you don't do it in a game consistently and you continue to do it, I'm going to sit you out, because there is somebody on this planet that wants to suit up for Golden State, that wants to box out to play in games. And you know what? Most teams, that'll get the coach fired. Here, where he's got these injuries he's dealing with, everybody understands that he's a championship level coach. Like, he can do this. And like like nobody could fuck with him. But if you want it done, most NBA coaches are just going to like yell at you in film, and like it has to be taken to the practice court. It has to be taken to the drills. It has to be taken to the games. And you got to call them out every second of every day that they don't do that. And sometimes NBA head coaches don't understand that. They're just so caught up with result that they don't care about the actual process of that happening. I know they like to say process. It's, you know, it's like space and pace. It's a fucking catchphrase that's said in every interview, every fucking press conference in the history of mankind in the NBA. But if you don't do it like that and you call them on their shit every day, like, look, you're the head coach, you figure it out. It goes to show you how sometimes coaching's way overrated in the NBA. Like head coaches, I don't care how many championships you win. If you don't have the talent, like you're not gonna be that competitive. Coaches, they don't add a lot of wins to you unless they have the talent and can take you over the edge. Here's a guy who's won multiple championships. He's gonna be in the Hall of Fame, but like guys not boxing out. You would think that a Hall of Fame coach would get them to do that, but like it's easier said than done. But I think it's something, Bogues, that has to be taken serious. If that's what you want them to do, you got to call them out on it. You got to use the bench. See, so many coaches are afraid that if you bench guys will shut down on them, quit, and it's going to end up costing them their job. But look, if you want shit to get done, that's the only thing. Look, they're making 20 times what you're making. Like they've got more power with your owner in some instances than you do. But what you have over them is you could sit them. You can sit them. If that's a huge problem, that's the only way. You can't yell at them for that long. They're going to tune you out. You can't just bitch about it in the media because they're going to shut down. The one thing you could just communicate is like, look, I don't like if you're going to get out rebounding that night, okay, I can understand that. But if you don't fight consistently and actually make an effort to box out, I'm going to have to sit you. Then I'll put you back in, but I'm going to have to sit you.
That's emphasized on if you have it as a point of emphasis, I think you're more than warranted to do it. I think where NBA coaches get in trouble, if they haven't really put it forward as a point of emphasis or addressed it, and then they want to make an example of a middle tier guy instead of their superstar, that's when you get those guys that are like, man, like, fuck you, coach. Like, you know, a superstar hasn't done that all year. Why are you going at me? But if you, let's say Steve Kerr now, this last week or 2 weeks, your theme has been box out, get a body on every shot, guards get to the free throw line for the long rebounds. You take the guy out and you say, hey, this has been our point of emphasis. And all the good coaches, like you said, they use the bench. They use the bench as currency because that's the only currency they have. But the good ones will put that guy straight back in. So he'll take you out. An assistant will come and tell you you're sitting. And sometimes I've seen the good coaches do it 2 minutes into a quarter. Come out, hey, our point of emphasis is box out. The player will throw a water bottle and a towel, and then they'll give it a minute, and then the coach will come back and say, now get your ass back in there. And then there's that, you know, you're not benching for the whole half. You're not causing problems.
No.
But you have to have that point of emphasis, both on film, both at practice, and make it known to the group. And then I think it's more than feasible to use that currency. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, 1 to 15, you just treat them the same. Look, if Kemp Bazemore ain't doing it, you don't think that fucking Damian Lee's going to want to do it to get more time. You don't think Jordan Poole's going to want to do it. You don't think Toscano Anderson's going to do it. Like Nico Mannion, you don't think he's fucking begging for time. Like guys are begging. You can get them out of the D League. You can get players anywhere. You know, and you just have to make it known to the group. Look, I'm going to do this. The problem with head coaches in the league, not all of them, but most, are going to say, we're going to do this. And then fucking Steph Curry misses 5 box outs, nothing's going to happen. Yeah. The second that fucking Pascal fucking misses a rebound, he's going to bench him for the rest of his contract.
Yeah.
You know, you got to do it with everybody. And if they know that it's going to happen to everybody, they're not going to be happy with it. But if they see that everybody's going through it, then it's a little bit easier to digest.
No doubt. Totally agree. Okay, well, moving on to the NBL real quick, just some news. So Deng Adele, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his game. He was in the G League for a number of years. Fringe NBA guy, was with Cleveland for a few 10 days back in the day. Anyway, he was a marquee signing with the Illawarra Hawks. He came over and I think he signed a 2-year deal at pretty big money for the NBL. It's rumored to be between $400,000 and $600,000, which is big for the NBL.
Wow.
He's just being cut 1 year into his deal, where obviously the rules are in the NBL, I believe, that you have to pay out that year and then 50% of any following years. I wonder if they would have got a discount, but just struggled from day dot. Looked like he couldn't figure out the pace of the game, read and react type stuff. Really good one-on-one guy. as far as an ISO, but struggled. So just some news that was very, very interesting for a team to do that. I hope everything's all right with Deng injury-wise and he finds his feet, but a pretty glaring strike on his name right now. So he'll be willing to probably sign with someone on the cheap. I hope he is willing to sign with someone for basically pennies on the dollar to prove that he can still play at a high level and that, because now there's...
How old is he, Bogues?
I think he's in his mid-20s, but when these kind of things happen, there's rumors. There's rumors of what was he like in the locker room? Was he being a problem in there? Or, can he play at the NBL level? Was he So I think my advice to him was try and sign with an NBL team for basically nothing if you can, because you're already going to get paid by Wollongong for the rest of this season, or Illawarra for the rest of this season. Sorry, and then get back on your feet. But that was an interesting one. And Illawarra have slid. They were first at one point. They're now out of the top four. They are fifth or sixth. And a big part of it is Deng Adel. That everyone else has kind of carried their weight, and they thought he'd be their guy, their Australian marquee. And he's really struggled. So watch that space with where he ends up. But one other thing I wanted to pick your brain on, the Boomers, the Australian Boomers squad, it was announced a while ago. I'll run you through the names in a second. They're going to make their virtual cuts. So we're in a phase now where there's no training camp to make cuts because of coronavirus. There's obviously guys playing in the NBA. There's probably a few guys that potentially will be deep in the NBA playoffs in Ben Simmons and Joe Ingles. So we're at 24 right now. I believe they're probably going to cut it to 15 in the next couple of weeks. So I'll read these names out, and perhaps next week you can give me your squad. We'll do some more homework as I got you to do homework yesterday on a few other things we'll get to soon. But this is a squad for the Boomers right now. So we have Deng Adel, funnily enough, is in the squad. Deng Adel, Aaron Baines, Ryan Brokoff, Xavier Cooks, Mitch Creek, Matthew Dellavedova, Dante Exum, Josh Giddey, Chris Goulding, Josh Green, Isaac Humphries, Joe Ingles, Nick Kay, Jock Landale, Mitch McCarron, Will Magnay, Will McDowell, White, Thonmaker, Paddy Mills, Brock Modem, Mitch Norton, Duop Reith, Ben Simmons, and Mathias Thibault. So that's our squad. I'll get you those names so you can give me your squad. But just for everyone out there, that's who we're in the running for. Pretty hard, Pro, as a coach to. I mean, that's a lot of tape. There's a few kids playing in the NBA, obviously. Then there's one playing in Serbia. There's one in Turkey. There's one in the NBL. Pretty hard to make a cut via Zoom these days, right, Pro?
Yeah, I mean, I'd order a pizza on Zoom, but I don't know about cutting fucking guys on Zoom, especially if you haven't like worked with them in practice and stuff and get an idea about where they're at. These training camps are great for Olympic basketball, national teams and stuff. How many, Bogues, they're at 24 now. Do they have to get to a certain number, or do they have to get down to 24?
Well, I believe they'll go down to 15 from what I've heard, and then they'll wait.
So 24 to 15.
Yeah,
okay.
And they'll then have 3 more cuts to make, so you're 12 go, but they'll keep it at 15 because of injuries and there's guys still playing in their season and form. But it is a unique situation we're in with everything going on in the world. We talk about that all the time. But now Brian Gorgon, who's returned as the Boomers coach, his first foray in a number of years, he's got his work cut out for him to pick a team, because even chemistry, like how are you going to, it's not as easy as Team USA has the luxury of just picking the 12 best players, right? The other countries don't. You know, Dellavedova might work better with this guy. Like we know Delly and Baines work together really well, pick and roll, pick and pop, right? But Delly might not work together as well with Isaac Humphries or whatever it is. So how do you figure all that out on the fly by watching guys within their club? And the other thing is most of these guys, at least playing overseas and the NBL, are the 1, 2, 3 option on their team. So now the other question is for a Gorgon, like shit, who's my 9, 10, 11, 12 role player? Like how do I figure all that out? So interesting time, but just one for us to watch. So that'll be some homework for you down the track. Yeah,
maybe I can get a consulting deal with the Australian basketball.
Maybe. We do love swearing, just not on camera.
Maybe.
All right, so a little fun one I heard on the Bill Simmons podcast. So shout out to Bill Simmons, and I put a little bit of a twist on it, but they were talking about, and I found that really interesting, so I thought I'd do it with you. Price of admission players. So basically, you've got your last $100 for an NBA seat. So for your paycheck for that month, you've got $100 left. You're going to go to an NBA game. So what I decided to do was, for each decade since the 80s, we basically have a group of guys that we would pay to see with our last $100. The caveat was that it didn't have to be body of work, so it didn't have to be over their career. It's just for that era, and it could have just been one run from that era. So an example would be Jeremy Lin, right? Or Gilbert Arenas was one that came up. The Jeremy Lin Sanity run, that could be one. It didn't have to be body of work. So we're going to go through, this will be a little bit of a spiel for both of us, but I think it will be really interesting. So I'm going to start first. We'll go with the 1980s. So my price of admission All-NBA team from the 1980s would be, I had Irvin Magic Johnson, obviously, one of the best passers and Showtime guys. I had George Gervin, finger rolls, just the way he scored, very, very smooth. Would love to watch him play. Larry Bird, a guy that just fundamentally sound with his jumper, self-explanatory. Dominique Wilkins at the 4, self-explanatory, unbelievable dunks. You'd see something crazy athletically every night. And then Kareem at the center spot for the 80s era, just because the sky hook, he had a unique tool that you didn't see with a lot of other teams. So you would go to an NBA game every week and not see a sky hook, and then you see 15 of them watching Kareem. So that was my 5. I had my tough omissions were Isaiah Thomas with the Pistons and Bernard King with the New York Knicks. What do you got for me in the 80s?
With this, Bogues, the way I thought about it was, like, in these decades, I think I would probably, especially if someone didn't play all 10 years in that decade, I would rather somebody who finished the decade rather than somebody who didn't finish the decade and was sort of on the downside of their career. And I like players who transcend their position that are fun to watch. So Magic and Jordan in the backcourt, obviously Magic doing what he does and, being 6'10" point guard, and Jordan just sort of in any era, that guy, you want to pay to see that guy play, especially how exciting the guy was.
You put Jordan in the 80s. So say one caveat I also said was you can't use the same player in 2 eras. You can only use him in 1 era. So you put him in your 80s.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, fuck. Okay. All right, hold on. So I will submit that all right, fuck it. I'm going to put Magic, Dr. J at the 2, Bird at the 3, Dominique at the 4, and Hakeem Olajuwon at the 5.
Okay.
Hold on. Fuck. So you can't do 2. Shit. I never read I don't read caloric intake labels on the side of food, and I don't read fine print when it comes to emails.
Just the fine print.
Yeah. At the 5, I'm going to have to go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar then. So I'll go with Magic. I'll go with Dr. J, Bird, Neek, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at the 5.
Any omissions any notable?
Oh, yeah. So the notable omission would be now. Do the omissions count as my one pick or?
Yes. We're gonna put
they do count. So Kevin McHale.
Yep.
And Moses Malone.
Yeah, good ones. The 80s was a tough one because there was, like you said, there was a lot of players from the 70s, like Magic, Kareem, that was kind of their peak, and they were still in their peak in the 80s. But it's a tough pick. But I had about 10 players that I could have went with. But we'll move on to the 90s. So my 90s team was interesting. I chose Jordan for my 90s era. So he's my starting 2 guard, just because I think as far as an individual talent in the 80s, he was probably better. Like, I think as far as electrifying, dropping big numbers, but I think once he figured out winning championships, he was a bit more balanced with it all. But that's why I went 90s, just because he won all those championships. My starting point guard, funnily enough, was Tim Hardaway. 90s era, the killer crossover. I think he really was, the pioneer for the killer crossover. I mean, it was just amazing. His ball handling skills for that era was kind of unseen. Followed his career in Golden State and Miami, and really enjoyed watching him play. Power forwards. I had 2 power forwards for the forward spots. I had Charles Barkley for obvious reasons, undersized power forward, just a brute in there, really athletic, and carried that, a Phoenix Suns team to a finals. Was really fun to watch. Sean Kemp, to me, at the power forward spot was just phenomenal. Athletically, I'd pay to see him any day of the week, and he was one guy that would almost guarantee to posterize someone every night. And then my 5 was Hakeem. So I had Hakeem in the 80s. He was very fun to watch, similar to Jordan, really. Massive numbers, highlight dunks, but what he did in that, predominantly that MVP year, where he just bamboozled, David Robinson, and I think Shaq was a rookie that year. What he did out of those guys was unbelievable. His footwork, his attention to detail, fade away both shoulders, just really fun to watch. My omissions, I had a fair few. I had Reggie Miller. I loved watching him play just because he was a prick. He'd talk shit to the fans, shot the piss out of the ball. Chris Webber, so he was obviously Golden State, Washington, and then a few years in SAC before their big run. He was fun to watch for me. And then I had 2 Euros. I had Drazen Petrovic just because he was, an idol of mine and was really a pioneer for one of the first Euros, Marshalonis and a few other guys that actually got minutes in the NBA. And Sabonis, I had Sabonis in there, Arvidas, just because of the way he passed the ball as a big man. I think, throwing shit behind his shoulder, behind his neck, behind the back. I'd pay to watch a guy like that just bamboozle someone with some crazy passes. That was my 90s. What do you have?
Yeah, and I love John Stockton, man. I mean, as point guard, the way he could run a team, how tough he was, how he fought, how he ran the pick and roll. I just thought he was a special player. One of the best point guards of all time. MJ, of course, at 2. Just the footwork, the winning, the killer mentality. Just, obviously no one really has to explain that. At the 3, I go with Clyde Drexler. Clyde was a special player, like athletically, just gifted what he can do. He could really score. He was, one of the best players in the 90s compared to Jordan early in his career. Probably the wrong one to compare to, but he was such a good player. Made it to 2 finals, couldn't really get her over the hump. But I'm a huge Clyde Drexler fan. And then Charles Barkley at the 4 over Karl Malone, I know. But, Barkley was so entertaining. He's just tough. He brought it every night. He was, he could go inside, go outside. One of the more entertaining players to watch. And then Hakeem Olajuwon changed the position, dominated on both ends of the floor. Big time defensive player, big time offensive player, footwork, won 2 championships. Just a guy that could carry a whole team with. And then notable exceptions, there's like 1,000 of them, but Karl Malone was probably one of the bigger ones. David Robinson was a guy that I thought about. Scottie Pippen, Shaq. But, Shaq was so entertaining to watch, but I think in the 2000s he was a little bit more dominating than than in this 10 years. So those are some of the notable guys that I kept off. But yeah, that was my 5 from the 90s.
Man, I missed John Stockton. Yeah, that was one that definitely should have been in my omission. So a lunch pail guy that would relate to a lot of people for price admission, I think. All right, so 2000s. This was a hard one for me. The 2000s were a hard one. I was played in this era, but also watched it as a young fella in college and high school. My 2000s, so starting point guard, I had Steve Nash, obvious reasons. He transitioned the game. A lot of what we see today was because of Steve Nash, I think. Just the pace, the D'Antoni system, that's what everyone's trying to play like now. My 2, I had Vince Carter, obvious reasons, human highlight reel, like just what he did athletically for about a 5 or 6 year span there in Toronto. He kind of slowed down a little bit athletically in New Jersey, still had it every now and then, but in Toronto, it was like, man, every night you were like, I'm getting my money tonight seeing this guy play. Kobe at the 3, obvious reasons, one of the greatest of all time, just his ability to turn games on their head by himself. Kevin Garnett, now I had a caveat in this, Minnesota Kevin Garnett. There was the year, I think it was 2002, where he just put up phenomenal numbers, carried that team to I think a Western Conference final was one of those years. He was very good in Boston. The numbers dropped a bit, but they had a team that was, tough and rugged. They were pretty balanced with Zerbiak and all those guys. And I really enjoyed watching KG play specifically with that Minnesota team. And then my center was Shaq with the Lakers. That was a caveat with the Lakers, not the Heat. With the Lakers during that 3-peat run, I think just his size, strength, athleticism, and as you said, the reason why he wasn't in your 90s team. I enjoyed him with Orlando as well, but just his sheer dominance with the Lakers, man, for those 3 years was just, the luxury to have Shaq on that post to get you a bucket and then have Kobe on the perimeter with shooters was unbelievable. And my omissions were tough on this one. Tim Duncan, a lot of people wouldn't look at him as a highlight guy, but for me, price of admission was just giving you a 40 ball without even really knowing that he's done anything highlight worthy at times. It was why I would pay to see him, just because he was just frustrating for me to play against, but also frustrating if you were cheering against his team, because he was just a bucket and fundamentally sound, would rarely make mistakes. Gilbert Arenas, the Hibachi year, 06-07, when I was with Milwaukee, he hit a buzzer beater against us. I was right under the basket for that one. I saw it go straight through, boxing out. So he definitely made my list for that year. Jason Williams probably could have been late 90s, but I put him in the 2000s as an omission just because, he was a fancy guy that you'd pay to watch. You'd pay to come watch the behind the back passes, crossovers, great ball handler. So I enjoyed watching him. And then obviously Allen Iverson was my last one that I had as an omission. I wasn't a huge fan of Philly or anything like that, but you couldn't understate with a guy his size and strength what he did with the 40, 50 balls at times. At times, probably overdid it with dribbling and whatnot, but definitely a guy that if you went to watch an individual, that would be one. What do you got?
Yeah, I had Steve Nash at the 1, Kobe at the 2. Nash is just like 2-time MVP, like a magician with the ball, like knowing where and when to give it to players. I mean, was one of the best shooters of all time, before Steph got in the league and got going, just because he did such a big time, shooting numbers, mostly off the dribble, mostly with defenders draped all over him, and just what he can do. I thought he was one of the most entertaining players I've ever seen. Kobe, for obvious reasons, the guy was just he brought it every night, and just one of the most talented scorers you'd ever want to come across. I had, some changes that I made to this. Tracy McGrady at the 3. I thought T-Mac was one of the most explosive scorers that I've ever seen, one of the most skilled players that I've ever seen. Be able to just athletic and handle the ball, could score all over the floor. I thought he was, really, really just a great player to watch. I'm going to go with Dirk Nowitzki at the 4. Dirk I'm just a big fan of shooters, man. 7 foot, can shoot, could carry a team. There aren't many players that could carry a team. And I thought that he was one of the best players I've ever seen as far as the skilled side on the offensive side of the ball. And especially early 2000s where he's more limber and more athletic than he was at the end. But I thought he was really good. And, I just kept on going back and forth. Duncan, Garnett, what have you. But I just thought, Dirk at the 4 was, I watched him play once, watched him against Boston. He was ridiculous early in his career, and he's a good one. And then at the 5, I was gonna go with Garnett, but I'm gonna go with Shaq. Shaq's just too good, dominating force, and he's a guy that you definitely want to pay to see. He's a guy that doesn't come around. He's a once in a generation player, and what he could do on both ends of the floor. And then obviously notable Garnett, Duncan, Allen Iverson, LeBron, but LeBron only played 6 seasons in the 2000s, and I know he won an MVP and all, but obviously I think I wanted to use him in the next. So those are some of the notable guys that I left off. So that was it.
Yeah, good ones. Good one. I had the same debate with LeBron. There's a few guys like that. So Dirk's the same for me. I went him in this era, which I'll go through now. So my 2010s, Steph Curry starting obviously at the point guard position. LeBron's my 2. KD. Oklahoma City KD specifically, even though Golden State the championships and whatnot, but he was a big problem in OKC and was very enjoyable. I had Blake Griffin at my 4 as far as price of admission, just because the athletic, I like having dunkers at my 4, as you've noticed, Wilkins and Sean Kemp and whatnot. He was just a guy, that Lob City run didn't win much or didn't bring much in the realm of trophies, but as far as getting your money's worth by seeing him absolutely shit on someone on a dunk, that's worth the price of admission itself. And then my 5, I had Anthony Davis. I had as my 5. Now I could probably change that for Dirk at the 5. Looking at it now, I had some omissions. I had the Dirk Finals Run specifically. I mean, Dirk had a fantastic career, but that Finals Run, what he did, taking that Dallas team to even get to the finals and then win a championship against the big 3 in Miami, that was off his own back. And just the run that he had, they just had no answer for him in the finals, and it was just so enjoyable to watch the big 3 that was touted as everything and anything. A kid from 7-footer from Germany that was just, they're putting him on the elbow, he's driving by Haslam, he's shooting fadeaways. And I watched a few of those clips actually while I was researching this, and I urge anyone that loves basketball to go and watch that finals run. Someone's put basically all of Dirk's big buckets from that finals series on a 10-15 minute clip on YouTube, and some amazing shots that he did. Late shot clock, the standard Dirk pump fake, a little shoulder into you, fade away, shots that just should never have even hit the rim were just stole net, and that was an amazing run. And the other 2 omissions I had, Chris Paul, obviously one of the greatest point guards to play and everything that he's done, even though he hasn't won a championship, he had to be mentioned. And then I had Klay Thompson as well, just because of in 2010 era, the Splash Brothers, and just his ability to nonchalantly drop 60 on you with 10 threes, I think is someone I would pay to watch. What do you got?
Yeah, so thank God you told me about this rule that we can't use multiple guys, because I literally mirrored. I literally mirrored it from today's game to before, but man, it's tough. So I'm going to go, because I originally went Steph and Harden at the 1-2. I'm going to probably change that to Dwayne Wade and Westbrook, because of the fact you can't reuse. So I want to use those two guys. I mean, D Wade with his run in Miami, starting in like 11 and on. I know he wasn't really relevant later in the 2010s, but early on he was really good. He was the best player on a championship team, and he's just electrifying. So I'm going to put him, Westbrook, another guy just that came at you and never stops attacking, triple double machine, and just sort of took the league by storm. So those two guys for sure. With that, and then Kawhi Leonard, Kawhi at the 3. Obviously, championship, just simple, big run with the Spurs, and then obviously what he did with Toronto. So I'm gonna put him at the 3. Yeah, fuck it, I'll just go small. I'll go LeBron at the 4, and then Chris Bosh at the 5.
Chris Bosh,
and I probably could have picked somebody better. No, you know what? I'm interested in Tim Duncan. We'll put Duncan at the 5, and Bosh could be a notable absence from the team. So let's go with D Wade, Westbrook, Kawhi, LeBron, and Duncan. That's my 5.
Not bad. I mean, I didn't even have Bosh at all. So it goes to show you how hard this is to do, man.
Neither do I now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot. This rule's good. I like this rule. I should have paid attention more. But so I'd put Bosh as a notable off.
Yep.
Because I got, what's his name? I got I got another guy at the 5. I'm having a senior moment. So let me see. So we go Westbrook, D Wade, Westbrook, LeBron,
Kawhi,
LeBron, and at the 5, Duncan.
Yeah.
So my notable guys that are off would probably be Bosh. Another guy is Paul George and Griffin, probably the 3 guys that I left off.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul George is a good one as well. But yeah, I just didn't have him in that mix. I switched my now a little bit from the names you just mentioned. So for my today is I got Westbrook as my starting point guard, triple-double every night. And we'll get into that a little bit in a second. Luka Doncic is my 2. I had Zion at my 3. Now, I had Kawhi initially, but I thought, you know what? There's just too many games missed for me. So I'd risk buying that ticket and he wouldn't play. So I had to swap him out. I put Zion and Giannis as my 3-4. And then I had Jokic as my 5 just because, and it's kind of the opposite of what I do with my 4-man. He's not that athletic dunking guy, but he's just one of those guys that looks like, like I've said many a times, a guy you drink with at the pub and just drops a 40 ball on you at a high clip, shooting, rainbow threes on you and 1-footed, disrespectful looking shots and pass the ball like any, the all-time great big men passes. So I really enjoy watching him. And then my notable exemptions, Joel Embiid was my other 5 that I was tossing up with Jokic. As of today, I had Dame Lillard, Kawhi Leonard was a exemption, and James Harden.
Oof. That's pretty good, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, today's a tough one to do. It just depends what direction you want to go, and just one of those things. What do you got for now?
We'll go with Steph at the 1, Doncic at the 2, James Harden at the 3, KD at the 4, and Jokic at the 5. Dame Lillard, probably a notable exception. Jason Tatum, notable exception. I'm probably overrating that. Bradley Beal is a notable exception.
Yeah, Beal for sure.
So that's where I'm going to go with the 1 to 5. Yeah, Beal's having a hell of a year.
You had KD. Now, I see KD's injuries and whatnot kind of made me put him in the 10s and just the OKC run. I mean, I think KD in any era, and that's what makes this so hard. You can put all of these guys, interchange them, but I just thought his peak in OKC was phenomenal.
Probably should have switched out Kawhi and Durant, for the 2010 and now, but yeah, for sure. That's why I'm fucking terrible at picking these teams, like all NBA teams, because all of these guys are gonna fucking average 2-2 the rest of the season and their careers because I put them on my fucking team because I'm Eddie Mush.
Yeah, but it's a fun thing to do. That's why I brought it up. I think it's just looking back to NBA history. Obviously, you need to know the game a little bit to an extent, other than just Googling names and what you enjoy watching. That's why I had some random ones like Tim Hardaway and Jason Williams. I didn't just go, the obvious ones at times. But yeah, it was an interesting thing that Bill Simmons did, so I enjoyed it. And for everyone listening, give us your thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of people that'll get fired up about these lists and for whatever reason, and try to do them yourself. They're hard to do. They're really hard to do. Like 5 players from an era, from a decade era is really, really hard to pick, and it all depends on what what appeals to you as a fan. You know, there might be some of these people that played high school basketball that love the fundamentals guy that set a good screen. So then I might be in their all-time team from a decade.
It's hard, man. It ain't easy, especially if you can't use guys multiple eras. You got to figure out how many years they played in that, you know, and especially like the players that only played the bottom half of like the bottom 4 years of one decade, and they only played maybe 4 or 5 years on the next decade, where other players, sometimes you're going to leave some players out just because of that. And then some top players, if we get lucky, and they could play the whole decade and dominate in their obvious choices. So, yeah, it's a tough one, man.
Well, everyone out there, let us know your thoughts on socials. Let us know which ones we completely messed up and which ones we didn't. I've got a new segment for you, Pro.
Sure.
Production bosses have come to me with this, and I think it's a decent one. We're going to call it. It's going to be a stat segment. So basically, we're going to, during the week or two, we're going to see stats that we think are either stupidly useless or wonderfully useful. So here's a stat that I found. I'm going to read it to you and you tell me wonderfully useful. So write this down with your old brain. Wonderfully useful or stupidly useless. Russell Westbrook is now 132-44 wins and losses when he gets a triple-double. So it's a 75% winning percentage. If you say it's empty stats, you are wrong. Is that a useful stat or is it, stupidly useless?
I think it's useless because obviously, if a guy's going to get a triple-double, he's probably going to be put like players. You got to see what type of team he played for, how good they were. Was he putting on triple-doubles on losing teams? Like, what's more valuable as a triple-double? I think it's useless, to be honest. I don't care if he scores a triple-double or not. It all depends if he's going to be putting himself in a position to win. So, and it depends on what team he plays for. So, I think it's useless on that end. What's your thoughts?
I disagree with you. So, okay, there's a lot of people out there. Look, some of these have been stat padded in his career. There's been notable highlights of Adams and whoever else boxing out and letting the ball bounce 4 times for Russ to get triple-double. Totally get that. But there is some sentiment around Russell Westbrook just chasing triple-doubles, right? And you can argue that when he misses them, they lose because he's over chasing them. But I think that stat, to me, is useful because it somewhat solidifies the point of when he does get those triple-doubles, whether he's chasing them or not, they win 3 out of 4 games. So I think it takes away a little bit from that sentiment of he gets a triple-double, but they suck. Because I thought that too. I wouldn't have thought he was 75% winning percentage with a triple-double, just based on, especially playing with Washington. It feels like he's had one every game this season and their record is below 500. But I find that a useful stat because it tones down that rhetoric around whenever he gets one there, a win or loss doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
Different takes.
I can see it that way. Yeah.
No, you disagreed with me. Don't try to come on my bandwagon now.
Oh, no, I ain't coming back to that shit. You're right. I'm a fucking moron anyway. But I'm just saying, I can see it. I can see what you're saying. But, to tell you the truth, I don't really care. Like I don't care when they come up in those fucking stats on the ESPN telecast or whatever. Like, he's 220-12 on a Saturday, second Saturday on a fucking leap year,
and that's
some
my point.
shit. You're just like, come on, man.
That's my point around that. They are the stupidly useless ones. So we'll pick one or two that we see during the week, and we'll debate whether they're. But I thought that one was useful to me anyway. I could be wrong, but yeah, if you see those ones, fans out there, send us through some absolutely stupid ones, absolutely great ones that you think solidify something, and we'll discuss them. But I think it's just a good talking point to see because some of these talking heads do come up with, like we said, the second Saturday of every month, this guy gets 20 rebounds, first time in NBA history. Fantastic. Fact or fake news? Let's rock.
All right. Let's see, Bogues. After not mentioning Monty Williams and Coach of the Year, wanting to send Kevin Porter to Siberia, and chastising Mo Bamba, and now is putting up Karl Malone-like numbers, Pro's job is in jeopardy.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Please tell me fucking it is. Just to put me out of my fucking misery. Like I'm old fucking Yella where you just gotta put a shotgun in my head. Just fucking end it, Bogues. You can get a homeless person on the fucking street will be better than me without a lisp like this.
That's what makes it. That's what makes the production. We'll say fake news. It's not in jeopardy.
Fuck.
If we were paying you, it'd be a different story. But we did balls up massively. As was said, Monty Williams definitely Coach of the Year discussion. And leading into this one, wanted to discuss I think the season that the Phoenix Suns are having, just quietly achieving what they're achieving. It doesn't get much respect, and that we proved that last week, right? We proved that we're not giving them the respect they're due. Is that because they haven't won in the playoffs yet? They're still unproven. I'm still not sold on them. I don't know why. I'm just not I don't think they have enough to get through a grueling playoff series. I love them. I love the way they play. I think they're well balanced. They're well coached. But I don't know what it is, Pro. I'm just not sold.
Yeah, it all depends on the matchup. And there are a few sort of situations like that in the Western Conference where, like, on a certain team, if you play one team, then you have to or you have to match up with Dallas. Dallas could fucking hammer them if they're healthy. But if they have to play, someone like the Lakers, the way the Lakers are playing, you're like, they might have a real chance on the first round matchup. But I agree. I'll go back to the question first. I'm hoping it's fucking, it's fact, but I'm probably going to say, since I'm not getting paid and you like fucking kicking me in the nuts every week, I'd probably say it's fake news. But what I would say is for people just to keep on hammering me on social media about mistakes that I make, because I'm going to make them, because I'm a fucking moron when it comes to a lot of the stuff that I say. So we'll continue that. All right. The NBA will continue Zoom interviews to shield its players and coaches from media after the pandemic is over and everything opens up 100%.
I'd like that to be fact, but it'll be fake news. I'd also like to include that they could visit strip clubs via Zoom as well, if that's possible. But I hate it. I don't love it. But it has been interesting because it does open up access to other countries of people that can't actually be there. We know how much the NBA loves to open doors for China. So this could be something they potentially keep in play. I think fake news, but I think the twist I would say is I think it'll be a mix. I think it'll be a mix moving forward. I think there'll be a potential where you'll still do your live interviews when everything's back open, but there will be a player grab to do Zoom interviews with international media and interstate media.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fact. I think they're going to keep it. Now, I think they might get to be an uproar a little bit in the media where they want to be there live and they want more access to players, but obviously a pandemic, even when you start opening up, I think that they're going to be cautious with that. But I think they like the fact that I think players like it too. They control when it starts. They control when it ends. There's not like reporters in their locker room lingering around and get stuff. Like they, basically go to your Zoom and then you get off of it.
You think no pandemic, this will continue?
I think it will continue, Bogues. I do. Because I think players like it so much. And you know how the NBA is with players. Like, they sort of cave when it comes to stuff that they like. Like, I think that they'll like that. Like, I think they control a lot more. Look, I think it'll be a lot harder for Kevin Love to do what he did in a Zoom situation than doing it live, where you could just shut the Zoom off if people are grumbling about him not taking questions about quitting on his team. But if he's got a media scrum around him, it'll be a lot harder to hide. So I think they will keep it. Now they might change it where if there's media complaining about it enough. But I think they're gonna keep it for a while. I do. And most of it's. These media, there's some media people that think they're bigger rock stars and players. If this happens, they will lose their shit. It would be, I would love it. I would grab a bag of popcorn and watch, because there's some dudes that come in our locker rooms that are boys with players and dapping them up and giving them a hug, and it would be fucking hilarious. I would love it. I don't think it'll happen based on that. I think it'll save the NBA money, because you could just keep the media people at home and be like, watch it on TV, and then here's your Zoom link. We don't have to give you accreditation. Yeah, it's a Zoom link.
We get another 100 seats for fans to make money from. But that's why I don't see it happening. They would absolutely lose their shit. I'm sure they've got some sort of union too, probably these days, and they'll probably be protesting outside with some signs. It would be great. I want to see it based on that. I just don't think it'll happen.
I can see that. Okay, I disagree, but I could see them having a big uproar about it. That's what I'm saying. It will change quickly, but I think that they will keep it. I think in the next couple of years they'll keep it, which means they'll probably go right back tomorrow to having live people, in their locker rooms. But I do think that they'll keep it for a while, just because it shields them from a lot of shit. Like they control it a lot more than they would a regular, press conference, even though they do have some control over it. But we'll see. We'll see. Last but certainly not least on my end, I know you have one question, Bogues, you're going to add, but the Minnesota Timberwolves will continue to step on the gas and win games, even though it jeopardizes losing their pick to Golden State, getting out of the top 3. Do you think that's fact or fake news?
Oh, man. Do you know the actual breakdown?
Yeah, so right now, Bogues, Houston's got the worst record in the league. They're 16-47. Orlando and Detroit have 19 wins apiece. They're 19-44. and Minnesota right now is 20-44. So they're one game out. They got to be in the top 3 to keep their pick. So right now there's one game separating them from the second worst record in the league. I don't think they're going to catch Houston. Houston's got, I think they're like 3.5.
Yeah,
they're 3.5 games over right now. So that's where we lie.
I think so Minnesota will continue to step on the gas. I think fake news. They'll have to tone it back. They got to protect that top 3 pick, and they're right there. I mean, you get an extra win, even though I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like tanking. I think it should be incentivized in the reverse. But I think they'd be idiots to lose out on that pick. They do have a new coach. He's doing a very good job. They've played much better since he's got there. But I think you got to make a business decision and say that Edwards fell and slipped and can't play for the next 10 games. And a few other towns, something happened there. We got to play our G League guys, and we're trying to win, but we've got to play our G League guys.
Yeah, I could see a big promotion from about 6 players. They're going to graduate from private soreness to general soreness quickly, and they're going to be out of the lineup because, look, I think Minnesota has a chance to be decent where this year, tank it, get in the top 3, get your pick. I don't think that pick's going to be great. I've watched some of the top guys. It'll be a good pick regardless. And then next year, Golden State gets it unprotected. Get to right now they're at 20 wins. So say they could win 20. So they got, 8 games to go. They could say they go 22-50. They get the top 3 pick. I really think with the pick, with everybody healthy, Towns playing a full season. I'm not a huge Russell fan, but he's still talented. And I think they're young guys that are playing pretty well, plus the pick. And then they can win. I think they can win 30 to 35 games next year. And then Golden State gets that pick at I don't know what that would be, 17. Because now, look, the trade wasn't great with I'm not a big fan of Russell to give up what you gave up. But you got him. I think that if you give up the pick now, and they're going to win regardless next year, they're going to be much better. I think with the coaching change, and then the players, developing, and then the young guys sort of taking a jump, I think they're going to be pretty good. So why not get the pick this year, end up being pretty good next year, and then Golden State gets the 17th pick. You don't want to give up the 3rd pick, and then you give up the 3rd pick, and then you have to then you're at 35 wins next year without that pick this year. So I think that they should probably again. 9 or 10 people, press conference, they've been elevated from, private soreness to general soreness, and then just let the thing go. And they get the 2nd or 3rd pick.
Or they all are in the COVID protocol for 10 days. That'll be the easy way out as well.
Yes. They could hang out with Porter Jr.
Can Russell and Edwards play together now? I mean, Edwards has come along much quicker than they thought, I would guess. Can those two play together?
Can Russell and Edwards play together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could play great together.
You think?
Edwards starting and Russell coming off the bench. Yeah, for sure. I think they definitely could play together.
Yeah, because the way I see it, you got those two guys that need the ball. Edwards needs the ball, and then you got Towns in there as well. We know if he doesn't get a few touches, a few trips down, he's going to lose his shit. So I think it's a good balance to have Edwards and Towns with some role players. I think Rubio's done a good job with being that role player for him late in the season. But the elephant in the room once again is Russell. I think he's the odd man out. Yeah,
I mean, look, he's not going anywhere. That contract is pretty big. So if you bring him off the bench, you give him starters minutes, but bring him off the bench. And then you have Rubio, Edwards, Beasley, Towns. You get top 3 picks. Say that top 3 pick, I don't know, maybe it gets you the guard from Gonzaga. So maybe, I don't know, and he's sort of like a Jamal Murray type. Suggs, I think the kid's name is. I forgot the kid's name. But so that's a pretty good lineup. And then you got D'Angelo Russell. They could get you 19 or 20 for sure. I mean, he is a scorer. He can get you, I think those guys that, are really good in your second unit. Because I think that a lot of teams are really missing that 19, 20 point a game guy coming off the bench to give the second unit a bunch. And then you can let him close games if you want. But I think he's better served coming off the bench. Gives that second unit You could put him with like a Koji, you could put him with Vanderbilt, you could put him with Naz Reid. I think that's better served coming off the bench, and that's okay.
Jordan Clarkson. I mean, he's a prime example. Like he was, early on wanted to be that starter and was fighting for that, and then finally bought into being a bench guy. Less responsibility as far as starting games, the defensive end, all that kind of stuff. Your role is come in and get us buckets. I think I agree with Russell. If he buys into it, that's the question. I don't see him buying into a bench role that easily.
Yeah, I think he's been coming off the bench though in the last few games, Bogues, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't watched Minnesota in a couple of weeks. But I think he, like watching the box scores and stuff, I think he does come off the bench. He's been coming off the bench.
With a healthy preseason, he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries and COVID and all that shit. So I think with a proper preseason where he feels he's 100% healthy, I just feel like that's going to be a hard conversation for him to take.
Yeah, for sure.
Making 25. But I mean, like I said, if you came to me and, you're making that money and we're paying you all this money as a franchise guy, but we want you to come off the bench and just get buckets. I mean, it's not the worst role in the world if you buy into it.
No, and then, he makes 30 next year. He's making 28 6 year. He makes 30 next year and 31-3 and 22-23.
I've got one for you. Okay, so Kevin Love will finish his contract in the NBA on a roster.
All right, so he's going to finish this original contract, the one that he's making $30 million a year on.
He needs to be in the NBA on a roster until 2023. Actually, not just on a roster, but actually playing, and whether he's bought out, moved on, stretched, whatever it is, he's going to be playing in the NBA throughout this contract. So he's not going to be stretched and sent home or bought out and sent home and not re-signed. So I'm saying there's a chance that he could just, yeah.
No, I think I think it's fake news. I think he'll – I'm sorry. It's fact. Because I think he will finish on an NBA roster. He will be stretched out. It's a stretched out or bought out, 100%. No, I don't think anybody's trading for that contract, although worse contracts, hey, John Wall's contract got traded, so any contract could get traded. But in my opinion, I think he gets bought out or stretched out, and then he gets picked up by an NBA team, and he'll play for at least 2 more years. He'll get signed by a good team, for short money, for either minimum or partial mid-level exception, and then he'll play for a couple more years at least, and then figure it out. But I think he ends up on an NBA roster. What do you think?
I think he hangs around. I don't think it'll be as easy as we all think. I think if you're a championship team or a team, if you're a young team, you're not taking him based on his track record of what he's done in the last couple of years. You're not going to have that.
Does Dallas take him? Dallas take him?
Oh, I'd love to see him with Rick. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, I mean, he'd be a decent fit. I mean, Porzingis in and out of the lineup. You can put Love at the 4-5 with Porzingis potentially. I just think it'd have to be a perfect fit. If you're a championship team that has a decent culture that's trying to win, you probably even question it to an extent as well, just because of, if he has one of those mental health days where he just loses his shit, that's what I'm looking at. But I think he will, but I don't think it's 100%.
Okay, I got you.
All right, we'll move on to Q&As. I've got a few this week, so hey, Bogues Pro, listening to your podcast. It seems the locker room of an NBA team is very individual. The concept of team is so prevalent in Australian sporting teams, it just doesn't seem to resonate the same way in the NBA. How do you then execute as a team in game time? How do the NBA teams build chemistry and a bond? Is it just through winning that it seems to grow? I find it very business-like when in reality, teams are made up of real people with emotions, friendships, etc., etc. That's from Mark. What are your thoughts on that?
So basically how they build chemistry and bond. To be honest with you,
I think it's so individual. I mean, he's basically saying it's from his eyes, it's very individual. It's not as team structured and based. And basically the only way you build camaraderie and chemistry is if your team's winning, because if you don't, everyone kind of goes their own way.
I do agree with that to a certain degree. I think winning obviously helps. I think the time players are getting different, man. Like it used to be that a lot of players hung out with each other. A lot of the teams, teams just they hung out. Now with social media, video games, people traveling with players traveling with people and they just hang out with them. That it is a little bit more individualized depending on the team. I think the winning helps. I do think losing helps too, Bogues. Like if everything stays together and they go through some tough times, I think that there's strong bonds that are sort of made through fighting through adversity a little bit, losing, coming up short. I think that people dig in. Now these days, people aren't digging in like they used to, but I still think that through adversity, through the time they spend, they tend to bond a little bit. Players are getting more and more individualized and more, individual rather than team. But I do think through, adversity, I still think that those strong bonds are built, because they've went through a lot together. They went through those wars together. They went through, struggling together. But, times are changing. And I don't think that it will be like that for much longer. But I think for now, it's still, I still think going through tough times really helps you sort of build that bond. What do you think, Bogues?
I think there's a different point to it. I think it is very individual as far as from the Australian sporting landscape, what we see with football clubs and whatnot, players that are together all day, every day, non-stop, barbecues, hanging out, dinners. The NBA is much more individual outside of team structured activities, so it can cause a little bit of an issue. As I've mentioned before, that's why the Golden State Warriors were so good. We actually hung out together off the floor and got to know each other, and that makes a big difference. Knowing that a guy might be having issues away from the court, and that's why he's a bit angry with things or whatever. Knowing your teammate, knowing what's going on, knowing their family, knowing their kids and situation, and they've got 2 kids, maybe they didn't get any sleep, whatever it is, right? I think that's important to an extent, and that's any group setting, not just basketball teams, but businesses, team sport. If you're a manager of employees. So I think that's lacking in the NBA, and that's just something you got to navigate. I think forcing it to an extent, like coaches that try to force that by doing team activities can sometimes work, but it can have the opposite effect because guys don't want to do it. But I think generally when you're recruiting, you got to recruit star players, but there's just not as much of an emphasis when recruiting players in the NBA looking into how they are as a person, because that can affect your locker room. You can sign a max guy that averages 20 a night, 30 a night, but if you sign a douchebag that's doing that, they can just light your locker room on fire and your 5-year growth, then you as the GM and you as a coach are going to get fired. So I think that's underrated. I think there are teams that look at it, San Antonio, Miami, but most teams, 9 times out of 10, they'll hire that max guy regardless of the baggage.
Yeah, you have to be able to hold the line, and NBA teams really have a hard time doing that, where they hold the line for for signing like a player that might help them statistically, but won't fit into their locker room. I remember when you and Harrison came to Dallas, I liked the thing that you guys did. I never saw that before, where we would go out to dinner and everybody, including staff, would have to put their cell phones into a bucket or basket. And then the first person to pull their cell phone out to look at it basically paid for the whole dinner, when those dinners weren't cheap. But I like the idea of, people have to talk and they can't be on their phones the whole time, and sort of trying to bond, and I think those situations are a lot better when people just go out to eat and they talk, regardless of how the team's doing, good or bad, and they're not on their phones the whole time and just having dinner and leaving. But I really like that aspect of it. First of all, I wasn't paying for a fucking $800 dinner. Second of all, I think it's just the little things like that really help the team bonding. I do agree with that. I think spending the time on the road like that really helps. And it didn't matter if the team was winning, losing, or what have you.
What was amazing about that phone thing was NBA players making $10 million a year. One thing, it'd be a competitive thing, but it'd also be like, I don't want to pay for dinner. So it actually worked. We'd ever rarely have a guy touching their phone till all the meals came out. But the minute that dessert came out, it was like the phones were taken. But it was an interesting exercise, and
yeah,
we used to do some random shit sometimes. Like we knew a couple of guys on the team that had wives that if that phone wasn't answered after the second ring, that they'd be in some shit. So we'd try to get someone to go to a phone around the corner, or try to get someone to call their phone that wasn't at the dinner. So they'd see see their phone light up and be like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And then they pick it up and just be like, I actually had a teammate of mine pick his phone up 5 minutes into the dinner and just be like, yep, it's on me tonight. Fuck it. Like I need to pick up my phone up. So
yeah.
A fun activity, that's for sure.
I remember calling some asshole from my fucking iWatch without them looking, and just to see if they were going to pick it up or not.
100%.
Yeah, pricked it and opened it. Yeah, it was fucking great. I felt like James Bond.
First time ever, right?
Yeah, first time for everything.
Bogues and Pro, I love the show. Rhymes in brackets. Did rhyme. Good job. When you're watching basketball with your family or non-athlete friends, do you focus on different aspects of the game compared to others? Some athletes have mentioned we average punters or average people don't understand basketball. Just trying to figure out what we are missing. Really enjoy the podcast. Kind regards, Ben Strahan or Strachan. So however that's pronounced, I'm not too sure if it's a silent C, but basically asking how we watch basketball. I mean, for me, that was when I was in season and playing and in Korea. I almost didn't want to watch basketball too much because I overanalyzed it all and I'd see different things. I think now I do the same thing, but I can also tune out sometimes and just try to watch. But look, I won't just watch the guy with the ball. I'll watch what's going on off the ball. I'll watch what their big man does, as far as screening, what the kind of action is, what adjustments coaches make, rotations. I do like the chess game within the game. I'm big on that. And that's not just with basketball, it's with poker, it's with anything I'm doing. There's always a game within the game, and that's what I like watching. And what players mean by people that don't understand basketball, without being disrespectful, but there's a lot of fans, even journalists and media people that will just look at a box score and say, player X had 30 and 10, that was great, and this guy who played 30 minutes only had 5 and 5. Why is he playing so many minutes or whatever it is? That's when guys get frustrated, because there are guys on teams that play a really valuable role that sometimes just don't show up on a stat sheet. And there's numerous amounts of those guys around the league, not just in basketball but in numerous sports, and I think that's where players get frustrated and label journalists or fans, you don't understand basketball, you don't understand what we understand, and that's what they're referring to. It might be setting the right screens for your teammate, it might be making the right swing pass, which you don't get an assist for. All those kind of things matter, and I think that's what people refer to. So don't always look at the guy dribbling 15 times, getting the bucket, or the box score, because it can be very, very deceiving. But what are your thoughts on that, Pro?
Yeah, Bogues, the game is so different these days, and it's not in a good way to me to watch. First of all, my wife hates watching games with me because I always rewind anyway, especially when I was working for Kobe. So she stopped watching games with me altogether. I mean, it just continuously rewind and stop and pause. But now, I actually tweet these things out now, and just to sort of something to do during games. I like the simple plays. Actually, because so many players travel from the wing, catch and goes because they split their feet.
Or step out of bounds.
I like watching.
Yeah, or step out of bounds.
Yeah, out of bounds is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Out of bounds. You've got 27 fucking coaches on the, trying to fight over each other, taking credit for all the players' success, that not one of them could fucking teach a guy not to step out of bounds or how to catch and go without traveling. And a simple catch and goes with no travel finish, or a good read in a pick and roll, or a cut off the ball, or a good defensive, possession. Those are the things that I like to look for. Since it doesn't happen, because most of the game is dribble, step back, 3-point shot with 8 people and, fucking draped all over you. There aren't a lot of those great plays, simple plays made in a game anymore like they used to. But I like to find the simple plays, the good screens, the cuts off the ball, the lob pass where, the guard on the pick and roll, had that, just waited that extra second for that roller to get behind his man to be able to throw the lob, the high-low pass, the dribble handoff, and the guy catching off the handoff gives it to the person who handed off to him. Little plays like that, and trying to just find little things to talk to players about being more simple and just sort of helping the team without dominating the ball. I hate ball domination. I don't hate it with guys like a Luka Doncic or a Steph Curry, because those guys are brilliant with the ball in their hands. But I like the simple plays, and that's I like rewinding, putting that 10-second tweet out, explaining it and throwing it out there for people who follow me. But I like the simple plays to watch during games for sure. That, like you said, the actions and I don't like plays. I don't like X's and O's. I think I don't like things like that. I'm just not smart enough to pick up on most of it. But I like those plays that you could teach players to do, just to win those small winning plays that add up over a course of a game.
Yeah, I've ran into a few of your clips. So at Hoop Consultants on Instagram and Twitter, Pro will post those 10, 15-second clips of just some unique, simple plays. I think you've labelled it as the simple basketball play, and I think they're really enjoyable, especially for young players trying to up and come to high school or college or even a professional league somewhere, that you don't need to be just constantly trying to cross someone over 4 times before you shoot. There are, I think, what's his name? Is it Bruce Brown with Brooklyn? I think is that his name? The 2-3 man?
Bruce Brown.
Yeah, he's a prime example. He's playing with a bunch of superstars, and he's niched out a really valuable role for them, I've noticed. And he's constantly cutting. He gets a lot of offensive rebounds from the guard spot because he knows. Look, I'm not gonna get the ball most times, most possessions. Everyone's eyes are looking at KD and Kyrie and even Blake Griffin to an extent and whatnot. Joe Harris shooting the ball where he sneaks in 10, 12 points just from cutting. As soon as guys turn their head to look, where's KD at? He's behind your head. He gets a layup. And if you watch their games, he does a phenomenal job of that.
Bruce Brown, Terrence Mann from the Clippers, Pat Connaughton from Milwaukee. Like, those just are a few guys that are really good at just sort of, just playing hard and finding sort of those little niche, little nooks in the court to figure things out, and they're fun to watch. I mean, there's a bunch of them across the league. Don't get me wrong; those are only a few that I like to watch. Like even Duncan Robinson, who shoots the three, doesn't do a lot more than that, but he continuously moves and just plays hard. And but those I love Brown, I love Mann. They're both Boston kids, and I love Connaughton. Actually, 3 Boston kids. Shit, I forgot about that. But those are 3 good examples of guys who just sort of does the little things to keep themselves relevant on the court, because obviously they're not going to be number 1 options. They're going to be the 4th or 5th best player on the court at all times. So they just sort of find ways to sort of get things done, and pretty cool to watch.
No doubt, yeah. We'll continue to come up with a few more plays that we see along the way. Next one is, hey guys, what sort of tests are you going through before signing for a new team? And are these tests mandatory prior to the validation of a trade or signature of a new contract? Are they specific to each organization, or does the NBA impose a standard bunch of tests? In light of the Bosch Aldridge situation, do you know of any deal that fell through because of a failed medical? And that's Nicholas from Sydney. Ever rarely does it happen. I think the Tyson Chandler one was the last big one that fell through, big trade that fell through because of a medical. I'd have to Google who it was. Chris.
Bad toe.
Yeah, it was bad toe. He was going to Charlotte, wasn't he, or from Charlotte? To OKC maybe. I can't remember the specifics.
He was going to go. He was going to go from New Orleans to OKC. They would have been a juggernaut if that trade went through, because they didn't really give up much.
Yeah, and they nixed the trade. So it ever rarely happens. A lot of times, don't forget, some of these trades, a majority these days of trades, aren't necessarily made for on-court production. They're done for salary reasons. So even if you knew a player, for instance, myself, towards the end of my career, you knew I got an injury history, there's probably something that's lingering. It'll be a deal to fit in salary. It'll be a deal to he's not really, we're not signing him so much to play 40 minutes. So there's that. The tests are pretty standard for each team. There's nothing detailed about them, in my opinion. If you've got something that's chronic, all they'll do is say, we want an MRI of your bad ankle, or we're going to MRI of your bad shoulder. You'll go see the team doc. Now, team docs aren't paid by the NBA teams. That's one thing people don't realize, and absolutely shocked when I tell them. Team doctors are not paid by NBA teams. They do it pro bono. They do it to put the team's logo and the NBA logo on their business card, and they do it to be involved with the team generally and be part of a team. And, if you're part of the Golden State Warriors, you got a chance to win 3 or 4 championships in 5 years. So it's a fantastic thing to talk about, a fantastic event in your life, but they do not draw a salary, which is just, when you talk to people here in Australia, you're telling me $100 million athletes, the doctor's not paid, which is mind-boggling. But other than that, the tests are your basic. They'll bang your knee with one of those little medical hammers. They'll bang your joints, make sure your nerves are all working. They'll move your hips around a little bit. They'll move your back around. And that's about it. It's literally 10, 15 minutes and you're out of the door. So look, you can hide stuff. There's been numerous players that have hid stuff. There is, I will actually say this story for story time because I think it's a good one, but there is a story I'll tell at the end of this about what you can do with medicals. But I mean, you probably haven't seen that too much, Pro, but I'm sure you've seen guys kind of get a pass probably when they shouldn't have, just because the team really wants that player.
Yeah, and I think you could sign off on it, because I remember in Boston we traded for Rafe LaFrentz, and I'm not sure if he failed. He came from Dallas. We traded Antoine Walker, and it was a multiplayer deal, and I think he had something with his knee, but we sort of signed off on it. I'm not sure, but weird deal. But yeah, it happens. Sometimes, I know Antoine Walker had something with his knee, like chronic arthritis or bone degenerate, just bone, bad bone, bone on bone. So there has been some things. I think a couple of trades that I think got rescinded. I think Sharif Abdul-Rahim, they found something with him. He had to retire when he was like 32. And I think that Coutinho Mobley, actually, the trade got rescinded because of his heart condition. But yeah, mostly a lot of these trades do come up with issues and they just sort of sign off on the trade anyway, instead of just like, failing the trade. I think that some of this stuff does come up. And remember, what happened this year? It was who was the kid, Bogues? Karis LeVert. He had the kidney thing and the Indiana deal. So they could have rescinded the trade. They didn't, and things like that come up. But
salary was a play in that as well.
Yeah.
So they had to make that work. So that's my point. Like sometimes it's not necessarily, if you're a live body and you've got a heartbeat and you can just report without playing basketball, sometimes they'll continue on with the trade.
Exactly. And that's sort of where it comes up. And then the testing, like, I think it's sort of just standard medical, that they just want to make sure that, I think they sort of walk you through the fine-tooth comb just to make sure that you don't have anything that the other team was either missing or hiding from the team they traded to. And I think they, in a lot of these cases with LeVert, it probably saved his life. Like some of these things, I know with Mobley, he had like a regular heartbeat, like some of these things. And then you saw it with the Aldridge trade, like, some of these things are very important in life-changing deals.
Yeah,
where,
Jeff Green was one as well. Yep.
Yeah, Jeff Green, it came up, like some of this stuff just comes up, and thank God they deal with it, and they got great doctors that work with most of these organizations, and they could just deal with it. But yeah, those are some of those things that I've heard about. But yeah, it comes up from time to time. Yeah,
I mean, just got to do as much kind of homework as you can, and most of the injuries are public. Media have written about them when guys get hurt, but you can hide them, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Next one, I'm baffled by what the Warriors are doing at the moment. There has been many an opinion given about whether they go all in for another championship with Steph or try to work it out on a balance of bringing the next generation through. Whichever option they choose, continuing to play Steph and win enough games to possibly make the play-in tournament, especially now Wiseman is done for the year, makes absolutely no sense to me. Can either of you make any argument for why they are persisting and haven't shut it down? Cheers, that's from Nico. That's a tough one. I've had this discussion about... I think we have on this podcast where they're in that no man's land for the NBA teams, but I can tell you're not going to tell Steph Curry to tank. You're probably not going to tell Steve Kerr to tank. You're not going to tell Draymond Green to tank. So that's the first reason. Are they in a position to win a championship in the next year or two? I don't think so. We had this as fact or fake news a few podcasts ago. I think they're a little ways away. I think even with a healthy Clay, they're still not a championship team. I think they're close. They still need to find that Andre Iguodala and that, whether it's myself or Zaza or JaVale, they're still a veteran key pieces away. And it goes back to our point about the discussion around making that move for Bradley Beal. That's why I would have made that move. I know Wiseman's a young prospect. You don't know how good he's going to be, but we don't know how good he's going to be. We know how good Beal is right now. So I would make that deal where I'd say, okay, Wiseman and that pick, that first round, hopefully top 5 pick for them, top 10 pick, I would make that trade for Beal. I would make that offer and try to bring Beal in next to Steph, Draymond, Wiggins. Then you got Clay coming back. That's probably, a roster that's getting you close. A few tweaks, a few buyout minimum guys that'll come and want to join the juggernaut. I think you got a legit chance of potentially making a finals game again. But with their current roster, I don't think I love Clay, but I don't think he's going to save the day as far as people thinking, Clay's back next season, we're going to be competing for a championship again. I still think they're, Clay back, it puts him maybe at 4-5, somewhere in the West at best. So how do you see all that?
Yeah, Bogues, when we had that discussion a couple months ago, whenever we had it, like that pick actually had a lot of value to it because you figured that Minnesota wasn't really trending in the right direction. You figured that you were going to get a pretty high pick either this year if they fell out to go to 4, but definitely that unprotected pick the next year. Then sort of Minnesota wins some games, they make some changes, they win some games, and now, like we said, like it looks like Minnesota will probably get the pick this year, even though it's iffy, but they'll probably get it this year, be much improved next year. So that pick sort of loses value. The more you waited on it, to make a trade, the less value it sort of has. And your team's sort of in no man's land battling for that 10-9-8 spot, where now your pick isn't as valuable as it was. Wiseman's still valuable, and you could still, but that Oubre deal, I'm not sure what Oubre's got left. Real quick, I'll just check on it. Yeah, so he's on a last year of a $14 million deal. So, I don't know if you could sign and trade him. I doubt you can. I'm not sure. But, now your chances of actually acquiring another player is slim to none based on the pick and having a salary player to bring someone back. Now that the Washington's winning, obviously they're not going to make a trade for Beal. They're going to roll with what they have. So it's now your chances, I thought if they could get something, if they could make a blockbuster deal with that pick, combine with Kelly Oubre, combine with Wiseman, get a really big time player, and then put him with Thompson, put him with Draymond, put him with Steph, and then maybe build something. Look, their second unit's a mess. They don't really have the firepower to be a contender, even with those guys coming back. Wiseman's a good player. I don't think he'll be a great player, but it's so early to tell. And then you've got Draymond, who's getting a little older. You got Steph, who's getting a little older, even though he's not playing like it. He's playing one of the best seasons of his career. You do have some good things, but where do you go from here? The only way your salary cap's out the roof. I mean, the luxury tax stuff is, what they're going to have to pay going forward is ridiculous with the money they've got on their books. So it's they're handcuffed salary wise. Their picks are, the value of the picks they can make for trades are going down. They don't really have much of a second unit. So even if you did make a blockbuster, you have to reshape that. That'll be a tough work. So I don't know what they do. I think you'll probably be more right than I am as far as being a championship contender. I don't know where this goes. You're going to have to deal Wiseman. If this is going to have any traction, you're probably going to have to deal Wiseman. You're going to have to deal that one pick, maybe multiple picks to get something. And then you got to try to make some type of salary work, to try to bring back a really good player. But I don't think there are any great players acquirable, so I don't know, it's one thing to go on NBA, go on ESPN.com trade machine and work out these fucking fairy tale trades. But I don't think that there's really that many players acquirable that they can get and if they are, what are they going to do? Get Kevin Love? He makes $30 million. You're going to have to come up with $25.5 to $26 million of salary going out to try to get a player like that. And even, I don't know if obviously he's not going to take you over the edge anyway. I just don't know how that's going to work, Bogues. I really don't. I don't see any really big prospect. Steph makes 43, Clay makes 35, Wiggins makes 29. Nobody's taking him. I got a better chance of getting traded than he does. Draymond Green makes 22. Right. And then Oubre comes off. So I think you could sign and trade him maybe in the summer, but no one's really taking him. Why, and then everybody else makes 8, 4, 2, 2, 2, 1, 5. So trying to get a player is going to be really tough for them. So they're sort of in that no man's land. I think they'll be much improved with Clay coming back, but I don't know how much more, because you can't acquire anybody through free agency because you're strapped because you're paying so much in luxury tax. I don't see where this team could really plunge up.
So you're shorting the Warriors. I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did a fact or fake news around Steph will win another championship with the Warriors. You were fact. Changing your tune?
I did. I thought that they would on trade deadline. I think we had this talk. Oh shoot! I think it was over a month because it was trade deadline.
Yep.
I thought that they could make a blockbuster, and then if they could get a Bradley Beal type. If they could have got Bradley Beal in a trade, in which at that time Washington was in the shitter, and there was a little bit of things coming out that Bradley wasn't all that happy, this and that. Could have been fake news, I'm not sure, but there were some things that could have worked in my opinion. But now, I'll call it when I see it when I think I'm wrong. I think it's going to be really tough, especially with their second unit not being great, and then they're getting a little older. It's not like they could acquire another, they're not going to draft another Harrison Barnes. They're not going to acquire another Kevin Durant. I don't see where that next piece is going to come from. I think Wiseman's good, but I don't think he's this great player. And especially how the center has been, sort of demonetized in the NBA these days. especially the way they need to play.
And that system, for a center, like we've had this discussion too, it's a unique situation. So I agree. I mean, I think they're just in that spot where you hit it too. They're aging. Like Steph's getting older. I think he's got 2 or 3 years probably at this high level max, and then he'll still be a very good player because he shoots the ball so well. But 35, 36, 37, time is of the essence. Draymond, his game is based on, he's not overly athletic, but he's pretty quick in his position. He's undersized, so he'll that'll start slowing down mid-30s. So my window, they've got a 2 or 3 window right now. They need if they're going to try to win a championship, it's now. Like you can't build, but that's the question for their front office and direction. Do they start going young and rebuilding? But Steph's going to be a career Golden State player. I don't see him ever playing anywhere else. So then you've got that elephant in the room of Steph wants to win at all costs, and rightfully so. He's earned that privilege. So it will be a fun one to watch to see if they pivot and how the mighty have fallen. I guess it's hard to watch, but being a guy that was there, where they're at now is pretty dismal.
Yeah, and like the next level of things you can do, you're not going to trade Steph, obviously. You could think about trading Draymond Green, but I don't think his value is that high to teams that are going to like. I think Draymond's a great piece where if you have 2 players that are better than him, if you're lucky, 3 players that are better than him, and then you add him to the equation. With his contract, it's tough. Klay Thompson, if you're thinking about trading Klay at some point, obviously the injuries that he sustained in advanced age, no one really knows what's going to go on with him. So, I guess the only other thing you could do is think about trading Draymond, but Draymond's at $24 million, $25 million, $27 million. That's a lot of money to take. And I don't think he could be your best player, but he's like your Dennis, he's like your Dennis Rodman to the, Chicago Bulls. Like if you have all these scorers and guys, and he's the tough guy, the defender, the guy who talks shit and gets everybody fucked up, by what he says and how he acts in the court in a good way for you. But I just don't see anybody really giving you a great piece for a Draymond Green. So that's the thing. I think they're limited to what they can do. They're not going to trade Steph. But what happens if Steph doesn't? I think Steph could walk this year, can he, or next year?
I think he can, but I don't think he will. I mean, he'd be. I don't think so. I think Golden State fans would riot if the Warriors let him walk or traded him. So that's my mindset. I think he'll stay there. I think he's a Bay Area guy. He loves it there. His wife's involved in a lot of different things there. So I just don't see it. But anyway, we'll continue to watch it. I think it's the front office has their work cut out for him. So we'll see if they pull a rabbit out of the hat. I just want to finish real quick because we're running out of time. I'm going to touch on a medical story that I've heard from a few friends of mine in the industry from back in the day. So we talk about the injury stuff, right? So there's a story about, do you remember when Vlade Divac signed with the Lakers towards the end of his career?
What, late in his career?
Yeah, so he was with the Lakers early, and then he went to Charlotte, and then he went to Sacramento, and then he signed with the Lakers.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think he barely played any games. Okay, so the story goes like this. So they wanted to bring Vlade back more as play spot minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I don't know what year it was. I'd have to look it up. But he comes for the signing. I think they signed him on a 2-year, $5 million, I believe. I think they gave him a decent deal towards the end of his career. And he shows up. So El Segundo was their old practice facility back in the day, and the offices were up there. There were some stairs on the side of the practice court that go up to the offices. His back was fucked up. Like it was to the point where the dude could barely walk. Right. So they had to give him some sort of, I think for the day, for the workout, he took a cortisone or some sort of injection just to get through the workout, because the Lakers wanted to see you're good to go or whatever. So he does a workout, passes it. I guess it's the next day he comes in to sign his contract. He couldn't really get upstairs, right? So the agent that I knew that was handling it, the team that was handling it, they had some people with them. They let, I think it was Kupchak at the time, whoever it was, walk in front of him, and they had a dude either side of Vlade, and with each step basically gave him a shove on the hip. So one step up to get up the stairs. That's how bad his back was. Signs a contract. I think he did like a bit of the training camp, bit of the preseason, and then that was it. Was done. Shut down. $5 million, thanks. And it was to the point where like the GM at the time, I think it was Kupchak, was just like, all right, guys, you got me. Like, good one. Haha, kind of thing. And it was, yeah, I believe it was something along those lines. Like they knew his back was messed up, and he thought maybe I can get to a preseason, do some training, some weight work, and it'll be good. And it was never the same. But that's a story that travels through the grapevine in the NBA.
I had one a guy that played summer league with an NBA team. I don't want to blow up the team or what have you. It was like early 2000s. They were in summer league in Boston. This guy came from China, tore his knee in China. And the GM, who just didn't care, it was summer league, so he didn't care. Like, so he was moving a little bit. He just had a partial tear, but he couldn't really play. So they're in summer league practice, training camp. They're going through the physical, and the trainer sort of knew something was wrong. The GM came, he had like a drink in his hand, whatever, coffee, whatever. He goes, "Hey, Johnny, what's going on?" He goes, "Nothing." And the trainer was like, "Look, I think we have a problem with the knee." He goes, "Hey, how's the knee, by the way?" The player was like, "Oh, it's great." He goes, "No, fuck it, sign it." So he signed the paperwork. The guy couldn't play in summer league, and the team had to pay for his fucking for his surgery and pay him throughout the year, because of a prior injury that he had in China that he didn't tell the team about, and because they didn't sort of follow through, then they ended up having to pay like a couple $100,000 to the kid. Smooth move.
It's a good move if you can get it, right? If they don't do their due diligence, bad luck. But,
shit, I'm in the wrong business.
That's it. Slipping 4, baby. Anyhow, that wraps up episode 18. Thanks. It's been a long one. Hope you enjoyed. At Hoop Consultants for all of pros clips and commentary on different things basketball wise, and then at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms and podcast platforms. Thanks again, and thanks, Pro.
Bogues, thanks for having me on, brother. I appreciate you.